The heart monitor in room 13 went flat. A long, thin scream of a sound stretched across the dark. I shoved the curtain aside and saw the man on the bed staring at me with eyes that didn't blink. His skin was the gray of pool water. The lights above him flickered like they were scared too. I grabbed the chart hanging on the rail to call the code. That was when I saw it. The chart said his time of death. July 3, 1978. I thought it was a joke. I thought someone wrote the wrong year. But then the intercom cracked and hissed and a voice I didn't know whispered through the speakers in every hallway, in every room, in my bones. Room 13. Deceased. 1978. The voice sounded like old tape. It sounded tired, like it had been talking for years. My hand shook so hard the metal clip on the chart clattered. I pressed the code blue button anyway. Nothing answered. No alarm. No beeping. Just the long flat line and the old man's eyes, still looking. Back in the hall, the floor shone like black ice. The exit sign glowed red, but the door under it felt like a picture, not a door at all. My radio only gave me wind. Then the lights went out. Dark drowned the room like a thick blanket. The only light left was from the heart monitor, a cold green line that did not move, and the tiny red standby dot of the TV on the wall. Something breathed on my neck, slow and warm and wrong. I turned around with my hands up. There was no one there. Just the white privacy curtain. It moved even though the air was still. When the backup lights finally coughed on, my eyes filled with tears without my say-so. The bed was empty. The old man was gone. The sheet still had the shape of his body, like snow after someone stands up. The leather strap of his wristband hung off the rail and swung in a soft, steady rhythm, like a clock counting backward. I took one step back, then another. The intercom clicked again. The same voice said, gentle as a lullaby, "He's been dead a very long time." The door to room 13 began to close by itself. The rubber edge kissed the frame and stopped, and in that tiny slice of shadow before it shut all the way, something pale moved behind the curtain. That was the top of the fear, the knife point. Now I have to tell you how I got there, because the night did not start with screams. It started with coffee and bad jokes and the hum of machines that pretend to be stars. It was my second month working the night shift at Mercy West, the oldest hospital in our county. The older nurses called it the Bones Building, because the walls groaned when it rained, and the elevator sounded like it was chewing. I took the job because it paid a little more and because I liked the quiet. Nights have a way of letting you hear yourself think, until they don't. At 11 p.m., I took report from the day nurse. She was a woman with red lipstick and brave hair. "All yours," she said, and tapped a clipboard like she was tapping a sleeping dog. "We're light tonight. 2 discharges in the morning. Only room 13 is odd." "Odd how?" I asked. She looked at the clock before she looked back at me. "The door sticks. That's all." Then she winked. "Don't worry. We don't use numbers. We use names." She pointed down the hall. "That's Mr. Wells. He keeps to himself. Says he doesn't like windows. Says they look back." I laughed because sometimes you have to laugh at nonsense or else it will climb on your back and ride you. I did my rounds. I checked fluids. I checked meds. I tucked blankets. Every room had a soft blue night light that made the white walls look like winter. The TV in the waiting room played a cooking show with the sound off, like the food was dreaming. The janitor on duty, a tall man named Luis, mopped in careful lines and sang to himself in Spanish. His voice floated like warm milk. At midnight, I stirred powdered creamer into a paper cup and watched the coffee swirl into storms. I thought about my brother, who said I wouldn't last a month on nights because I jump at my own reflection. I thought about the weird stories older nurses tell new ones just to test them. Don't take the back stairwell. Don't answer the phone if it rings 3 times. Don't ask who keeps turning on the lights in the basement. I finished my coffee. I did more rounds. My shoes squeaked on the tile, and the sound was almost friendly. In room 8, a woman slept with her mouth open and her hand on her heart. In room 10, A man watched an old movie and didn't blink when I checked his drip. Room 11's monitor made a soft, steady beep like a metronome. Room 12 was empty, bed smooth and perfect. The hall grew long. The clock hands climbed and then forgot to climb. When I put my hand on the knob of room 13, even though I told myself I did not care about numbers, even though I told myself that silly stories are just stories, a small cold cat of fear walked along my spine with careful feet. The knob was colder than it should have been. I had to push harder than I should have. The door sighed open like an old person getting out of a chair. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and rain and something metal. The window shade was down all the way, even though I never leave shades down at night. People wake up easier when it is not so dark. He was awake. He lay very still and watched me with no hurry. He was old the way rocks are old. His eyes were the color of lake glass, pale and quiet. His skin looked thin enough to see thoughts moving underneath. The name on the board said Wells, A. The whiteboard marker line under Nurse was blank. "Hi, Mr. Wells," I said softly. My voice was too loud. The room ate it. "I'm on for you tonight. Do you need anything?" He blinked once. His lips opened like he was going to speak. They closed again. He raised a hand with blue rivers under the skin and pointed at the curtain, the one that cut the room in half even though there was no second bed. "Do you want me to open it?" I asked. He shook his head so small I almost missed it. He put his finger against his mouth. "Shoo." I felt silly, like I was in a play. "Okay," I whispered back, because sometimes whispering makes fear smaller, like putting a blanket over a birdcage. I checked his fore. The tape on his arm was yellowed at the corners like it had been there too long. The machine beside him ticked his heart out, not loud, not slow. The little green hill went up, went down, went up. It was fine. Everything was fine. "I'll be right outside," I told him. "You press this if you need me." I put the call button where his hand could find it. On my way out, I tried the window shade. It did not want to move. I tugged once, twice. It gave me a little, then fell back down as if a hand on the other side pulled it shut again. I told myself it was the spring inside. Springs get old. They get stubborn. Doors stick. Machines make noises. Everything has a reason, and the reasons are boring. Boring is good. Out in the hall, I wrote Wells, A. under Nurse, me. I drew a smiley face after it because he looked like the kind of man who would make fun of a smiley face but secretly be glad someone drew it. At 2 a.m., the air changed. I can't tell you how. It just did. The hum of the building shifted key. The soda machine at the corner stopped tapping and held its fizz like a breath. The TV in the waiting room flicked to static for a second without asking me. When it clicked back to the cooking show, the chef was holding a knife and looking at the camera like he could see me. Luis rolled his mop bucket to the end of the hall and lifted his chin toward room 13. "Door stuck again?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, surprised and kind of happy to talk normal. "How'd you know?" He shrugged. "It does that. Old doors don't like to close. Old doors don't like to open. Same as old bones." He smiled, then didn't. A shadow moved under the bucket like the water was thinking. He glanced back at room 13 and then at me. "You want me to prop it?" "No," I said faster than I meant. "Thanks though." My face felt hot. "Está bien," he said. "Call if you need." I wanted to say, "I won't need," but the words would not come. I finished charting in the tiny nurse station with the plant someone kept alive even though the sun was a memory here. I wrote boring things that are important, like the amount of fluid in a bag, like the way a pupil reacts to light. Important boring things keep people alive and keep the night safe. A phone rang. Not my desk phone. Not the wall phone. The sound came from farther away, from the old wing we don't use, the part behind 2 heavy doors with peeling paint. It rang 3 times and stopped. My skin tried to walk off my body. I told myself I did not hear it. I made myself go into room 13 again at 3 a.m. because I didn't want the room to become a story I was scared of. I wanted it to be a room. A bed. A person. A small table with a cup of water on it that I could refill as many times as it took to make the fear quiet. Mr. Wells watched me come in. He looked tired, like water looks tired when it has been holding a boat too long. The machine hummed. His chest lifted and fell like a wave when the moon is bored. I reached to straighten the sheet, and the hair on my arm stood up at once, at attention, like soldiers when a general walks in. Someone else breathed in that room. Not me. Not Mr. Wells. Someone behind the curtain. I stopped moving. I listened with my belly. The breath was slow and careful, the way people breathe when they are pretending to be asleep. I looked at Mr. Wells. His lake-glass eyes were wide. He shook his head a little. His lips made the shape again. Shoo. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I am curious. Maybe because I thought, it's just the AC. It's just the heat. It's just my own noise. I pinched the edge of the curtain between 2 fingers and pulled it an inch. The air behind it was colder. Hello? I whispered to the cold. Something whispered back. It didn't say a word. It said the shape of a word. The shape slid into my ear and I did not like the shape. I let go of the curtain. It fell back into place like a hand slapping my knuckles. The room felt smaller, like the walls leaned in to see what I would do next. I did the only thing that made sense. I made the room boring again. I adjusted the drip. I fluffed the pillow. I looked at the clock. I told Mr. Wells I would bring him warm blankets. He nodded. His eyes thanked me, like maybe warm blankets were the most human thing left. In the hall, the blanket warmer made a soft click as it opened. Heat rolled out like breath from a sleeping dog. I tucked 2 thick blankets over my arm and went back. That was when the intercom popped and coughed. The building cleared its throat. A voice spoke, slow and dry. Room 13, it said. Deceased. Time of death, 0251. July 3, 1978. The blanket slid off my arm and puddled at my feet. I bent to grab it and almost fell, because my knees went too soft to hold me. I looked at the clock. 3:09. I told myself someone was messing with me. A prank. A mean joke new nurses have to live through. I walked faster. I pushed the door to room 13 with my shoulder. It stuck, then gave, like a mouth deciding whether to swallow. Mr. Wells' monitor line was flat. I don't remember crossing the room. I remember the cold, though. It lived in the space where my breath should have been. I checked for a pulse because we always check. We do what the steps say even when the steps are scared. His skin under my fingers felt like the back of a porcelain sink. I hit the code button with my elbow, hating the shape of that sound already. Nothing answered. No rush of feet. No cart screaming down the hall. The intercom said nothing more. The world went still, like when the teacher puts her finger to her lips and even the quiet kids get quieter. I grabbed the chart to call anyway, to shout through the phone, to demand the world notice this man had stopped. The chart was old. The paper edges were fuzzy. The handwriting looked like spider legs from a humbler time. The top page said his name. The second page said his allergies. The third page said the date. It did not make sense. It made less than sense, like numbers in a dream. I flipped to the last page. Time of death, it said in a calm black line. 2:51. The ink had faded to the color of tea. Someone had written a note under it. I could not read it. The letters slid away when I tried to look, the way words on a license plate slide through rain. Help, I said, but I did not sound like a person. I sounded like a phone with 1 bar left. That was when the lights died. The long scream of the flatline held the dark together. Warm breath touched my neck. I turned, slow as a leaf turning in water. No one stood there. The curtain moved. It had the gentle sway of something that had just let go. The backup lights woke up. Their yellow glow made everything sad. The bed was empty. That's the part one can't explain even to myself, even now. The bed was empty. The sheet still remembered him. The wristband swung. The monitor kept screaming he was gone even though there was no one to be gone. I stepped back. The door began to close by itself, slowly, like a hand not sure it should let go. The last thing I saw before it touched the frame and stopped was a pale shape behind the curtain, bent like a person trying not to be seen. I put my palms on the door and pushed it open again like I was pushing against wind. The pale shape was gone. The room felt just a little warmer, like something large had left and taken the cold with it. I walked to the curtain and pulled it all the way. Behind it, there was nothing but a second window, painted shut, and a chair no one sits in, and a small wooden table. On the table was a folded piece of paper, brown along the edges. Someone had tucked a hospital wristband under it like a paperweight. The band had a name printed in tiny black, the old dot matrix kind, Wells, A. Under that, a date, July 3rd, 78. Okay, I said out loud, because people say okay when something very much is not okay, the way people whistle when they don't feel brave. I turned toward the hall. Luis was there. His mop was still. His face was a question. You heard it too, he said. I nodded. He lifted his eyes to the ceiling, like he was listening to the pipes. Sometimes the old floor talks to itself, he said, as if we were discussing a leaky sink. Sometimes it says things again. Like echoes. Like it cannot help but remember. He looked at the empty bed and stopped pretending. I don't go in 13, he said softly, apology like dust in his words. I clean around it. I let the room keep what it wants. I wanted to laugh or cry or scream. Instead I did what nurses do. I wrote what I saw. I wrote what happened. I wrote what the machine said, even if the machine talked like a ghost. I called the supervisor again and left messages in every place the night hides humans. I stood in the doorway and waited for a sensible person with a genuine heartbeat to arrive and tell me the joke was over. No one came. At 4 a.m., the cooking show in the waiting room changed to the news on its own, and the newsman's mouth moved but the words didn't match, and a banner slid across the screen that said, in bright letters that made my stomach lurch, Mercy West celebrates 100 years, 1928 to 2028. The numbers were wrong even when they were right. I went back to the room. I picked up the folded paper under the wristband because I didn't want to but wanted to more. The paper was a discharge form. The name at the top was not Wells, A. It was a name I did not know then and still don't know now, a neat old name. The problem was the signature. It was the same as the signature on my nursing license. Not a match. Not a copy. The same hand. My hand. The letters danced until I blinked hard enough to make them sit. I heard a sound then, from under the bed. A soft scuff like a bare foot deciding. I crouched. The metal rail pressed cold against my cheek. The space under the bed was a mouth of shadow. Something white lay just at the edge, like a fish belly in a dark stream. I reached in and my fingers closed around a shape that was not the shape I wanted. It was a toe tag. I told myself it would say Wells, A. It would be part of the old paperwork. It would be a leftover, an error, a lost thing the room forgot to throw away. I turned the tag over and read the printed lines. Name. My full name. Admitted. July 2nd, 1978. Room 13. My heart forgot how to do its job. My mouth opened and found no air. The sound that came out was a small cracked thing, the same sound a cup makes when it breaks in another room. The intercom hissed like a match going out. The voice returned, closer now, not in the ceiling but in the walls of room 13, in the floor, in my own chest. You're late, it whispered. The door behind me slammed hard enough to wake dust from the ceiling. The lights cut. The monitor lit the room with ghost green. The empty bed moved an inch toward me, as if pushed from the other side. The window shade lifted a finger's width and someone's eye, my eye, the same color, the same tiny freckle in the iris, looked through. I stumbled back into the table. The folded paper slid to the floor and turned itself over without help. On the back, written in the same pen as the old chart, were 3 words in crooked lines. Do not open. The window shade jumped. Hands slapped the glass from the other side. 10:20. a crowd in a storm. The intercom voice tried to say something else and choked on it. A shadow rose from the empty bed like smoke with a shape, tall and thin and wearing the idea of a hospital gown. It tilted its head the way I tilt mine when I'm trying to be kind. "Do not open," the paper said again, but I'd already wrapped my fingers around the cold metal chain of the shade. I pulled.